Ever notice how some speakers can grab the room in seconds while others just lose it fast? The difference isn't confidence, it's connection. And in this week's episode of Profit with a Plan, we're breaking down the art and science of storytelling with Dr. Danny Brassell. Yes, the Jim Carrey of the PhD world, who has spoken to over 3,500 audiences worldwide. So you'll learn the 5 C's of a well crafted story that makes your message unforgettable, why emotion and not information actually drives people to act, and how to communicate with impact without sounding pushy or rehearsed. So, whether you're pitching to investors, leading a team, or speaking from the stage, this conversation will show you how to turn every message into a story that moves people and moves business forward. So don't miss this episode, and your next client might be waiting for the story you haven't told yet. Hey, entrepreneurs, are you working too hard for too little profit? Well, welcome to Profit with a Plan podcast, where we help you scale smarter, increase profitability, and build a business that's worth more, whether you keep it or sell it. I'm Marcia Riner, business growth strategist and profit booster behind Infinite Profit. I've helped countless entrepreneurs to turn their businesses into highly profitable, sale ready assets so they enjoy more income now and a bigger payday later on. So join me for practical strategies, expert insights, and proven steps to make your business more profitable, more valuable, and built to last. Today's episode is sponsored by Infinite Profit, where we don't just talk profit, we deliver it. But before we dive in, I've got something special for you. If you're tired of flat revenues and marketing that just doesn't seem to pay off, my new Profit Booster Growth Map might be for you. In just a few minutes, it'll show you exactly how you can bring in more qualified clients and plug the profit leaks that are eating away at your cash. So get your growth map at profitbooster.biz. Just click growth map and answer a few questions and it'll come right out for you. And start turning those missed revenues into real money. All right, let's jump into today's episode. Dr. Danny Brassell is a sought after speaker, trainer, and coach, affectionately known as the Jim Carrey with a PhD, for his infectious energy and humor. Having inspired over 3,500 audiences around the world, he's on a mission to help leaders and entrepreneurs to communicate in a way that truly connects and converts. He's an author of over 20 books, right? Wow. Including The Leadership Begins with Motivation and Misfits and Crackpots. Danny is also the co founder of the WellCrafted Story workshop, where he teaches professionals how to use storytelling as a powerful business tool. His proven 5C framework will help anyone transform their message from informative to unforgettable. And so they can influence with authenticity and real action. Danny, thanks so much for coming on the show. We're excited to have you today.
Thanks so much for having me, Marcia. More importantly, thanks for all the joy you're spreading. And that was a mouthful.
Right?
Kudos to you.
Thank you, right? I get my chat, sets it all up for me and then I'm like, So the
Free.
great thing is I don't have to talk too much now. It's all on you. So Danny, how'd you get in the world of speaking and influence like this?
Well, if I was going to write an autobiography, Marcia, it would probably be called Pivots because I feel like I've already lived 9 lives. 30 years ago, I was a reporter covering President Bush Sr. in the 1992 presidential election, and I loved my job. Got to meet every editor of every major daily. And one editor offered me a job doing the city beat for $16,500 a year. Meanwhile, a friend told me they were hiring teachers in South Central Los Angeles for $25,000 a year. So I became an educator for the noblest of reasons, Marcia, for the high pay. And
I pay back then.
exactly. It turned out I actually loved it. I've taught all age levels from preschoolers all the way up to rocket scientists. I can make that claim because I used to teach English as a second language to engineering students at the University of Southern California. And in
Wow.
2005, my wife and I attended a real estate seminar, which turned out to be a scam, and we lost everything. And I could give you the woe is me story, but I'm a positive person. I learned a lot from that experience. First of all, my wife is my soulmate. I put her through the ringer and she stood right by me. She's an incredible human being.
That's
Second of
amazing.
all, I learned that money's not everything because you can lose money just like that. Third, I try not to judge other people because if I was somebody who saw what I had done, I would have said, well, you deserve that. But now I realize unless you know everything about a person, you really don't know anything about a person. Fourth, I became Christian, which I'm always embarrassed to confess. But the more I read the Bible, I realize I'm not the first screw up to find Jesus. And
Mm.
fifth, I didn't want to file for bankruptcy. And my accountant said, well, you have to make this much more money this year then. And so I started speaking on the side and I hit that number right on the number. Well, then the next year, Marcia, he gave me a much higher number. And I hit that number right on the number. So in year three, I thought, well, maybe I should set a higher number. And basically, during one of the worst economic downturns in American history, I was able to build up a highly lucrative speaking business, which eventually caught the attention of some pretty famous people and companies who asked me to coach them. And I have to confess, I really resisted coaching at first because you need to know this about me. I have a very high standard for my students. I will not let you fail. I will be on your back, holding you accountable until you succeed. Well, now that I
Mm.
work primarily with entrepreneurs and executives and business owners, I find that they're highly motivated. They do the work, and it's probably been the most gratifying thing I've ever done. So there's a long answer to your short question, Marcia.
I love it. I love it. But you know, it is so there's like I've had clients, right? Because I'm in a consulting coaching kind of space as well, but I've had clients that we just create this incredible opportunity for them and they don't do anything with it. And it's so like, I mean, how do they do that? How did they get to where they were and how are they going to get to where they want to be if they can't pull the trigger? And then like you, I have the people that actually do it and it's so much fun. It's so rewarding and they really outperform anything that we've ever put in paper. So,
Hey,
yeah, I love working with those
I
kind
was
of folks
speaking at
too.
an event a couple of months ago, and the two speakers before me were introduced as thought leaders. And so I guess I was feeling facetious that day, and I got on stage. I said, "Raise your hand if you need another thought." I'm not a thought leader. I'm a results leader. We take action. So that's what separates you from everybody else, Marcia. Kudos to you.
Oh, I love it. And you know what? You hit it right on on the point. How do you differentiate yourself, right?
Mhm.
And when you're trying to grab attention in today's like bonkers, short attention span, and it's not that it's a I heard someone say that it's not a short attention span, you're just not grabbing it because
Right.
how many of us have like, binge watched a show and watched, 8 episodes in one sitting going, wow, right? So I really think that it's not the attention span, but it's the higher quality of what we're saying that will catch them and get them to stop.
Yeah, there's an old saying, if people aren't calling you back, you just ain't attractive enough.
Uh-oh. That's great. I see, I love those little coins because they sit, right? And that's where I think you grab them. And if you start your speech, right, your talk, your presentation with, hey, I'm going to be a disruptor. What does that do for the audience? It gets them to sit up and go, how are you going to disrupt my thoughts, right?
That's right.
So fantastic start. Okay. So let's go on with that question then. How do you grab their attention and disrupt their thoughts?
Well, so you introduced me it was a long introduction, a very gracious introduction. I'm a former school teacher, so you have to bear with me. Everything I do either rhymes or it's alliterative. And so I have a company with Coach Jimmy Hayes Nelson and Dave Ward called the WellCrafted Story Workshop. I call us the professor, the performer, and the producer because my background is in academia. Coach Jimmy was a Broadway actor and Dave is an attorney. And so we take our clients through what we call the 5 C's process. And those 5 C's are clarity, connection, content, call to action, and close. And so we'll address your question, which is specifically on the second C, which is to connect with your audience. So again, former school teacher, I always say in the first 5 minutes of your presentation, you need to wrap. WRAP stands for being relatable to your audience, demonstrating your authority, and then showing them your purpose. So
Oh,
relatable.
I thought it was going to be like a hip hop, a hip to hip.
No, no, I'm as white as they come. My wife
You
once,
and me both.
yeah, my wife once said there are white guys and then there are white guys, and I'm like, well, I don't really know what you're talking about, but I assume based on your tone, I'm the second type of white guy. Um, so relatable means, hey, I've had, I'm just like you. I've had that same problem that you've had, authority, and I solved that problem. purpose. And now I'm on a mission to help people just like you so you don't have to suffer the way I suffered. If you can establish that in the first 5 minutes of your presentation, you're going from a good presentation to an actually great presentation. What separates them is great presentations are intentional. They don't just move hearts. They also move the needle.
I love it. You know, that is so important. And I preach that to my podcasting world that I talk into as well, that, you know, you're not just on the camera to hear your voice and say something great. You have to do something with it, right? And I love that analogy that if you capture them and you wrap in the beginning, you're going to make it more intention throughout the conversation that they're going to come what they used to call in real presentations, they'd rush the table in the back, right?
Yeah, I mean there's many people that have great stories, but your stories have to be very intentional with purpose. So I'll give
Mhm.
you and your listeners an exercise. This is one of the first things I do with clients is later on I want you to sit in a comfortable chair with a pen and paper, libation of choice, and for an hour I want you to write down every story that's ever happened to you. And I don't mean
Mhm.
the entire story, I just mean triggers, like the time I locked myself out of the car in front of Costco, the time
Ush.
the time Dad spilt mustard on his tie when we went to that fancy restaurant. You'll find that in an hour you can come up with hundreds of stories like that. So that's the first part of the exercise.
Wait a minute, is it really that easy? I mean, I'm sitting there going, okay, what would be my first one? You know, it's like looking at the blank cursor on a Word document going, how do I start?
Well, you don't want to see you impeded yourself by trying to figure out what's interesting and what's not interesting, which makes you the judge. I would write them all down because even the most mundane. I actually once watched an interview with Cameron Crowe, who he directed all kinds of great movies. One of my favorites is Almost Famous, but he used to be a writer for The Simpsons. And the executive producer for The Simpsons is James Brooks, who's just another wonderful writer and producer. And Cameron said that when he was writing an episode, he'd go in and meet with Jim and he's like, "Well, this is what we're going to do for this episode." And Jim's like, "Oh, how'd that date go with you this weekend?" And all of a sudden you start talking about his date, and by the end of the conversation with Jim, the entire episode was about that date. And that's the power of really good storytelling is taking the mundane. So for example, I'm working with, by the way, everybody I work with, I'm very discreet. I always change the
Oh, but
name.
you're dropping some serious names here, so I don't
No,
know.
no. If you want to talk to my partner, Coach Jimmy, he loves to name drop everybody we work with. I'm exactly the opposite. And so we're working with a woman. She's a nutrition expert. We'll call her Kathy. And Kathy, she grew up with this intestinal problem, and no doctor could solve it. And so she created this diet that helps women with this type of intestinal problem. And so at the end of her presentation, she offers a 90-day coaching program for 1997. And that's where she ended her presentation, which, first of all, that's a big mistake because she's ignored the emotional impact that she can have there. And that's what I told her. I'm like, that's a big mistake that you're doing. I've always said that there's two types of people in the audience. I'm going to be stereotypical and say it's the husband and the wife. The,
Okay.
the
Well, you're
husband's
going to identify to one of those.
Exactly. The husband's Joe Friday. He's the guy sitting in the audience with his arms crossed like this, who's thinking, how much does this cost me? How long does it take? What do I got to do? And a well-crafted presentation addresses those questions, so he's satisfied with those answers. But if you just focus on Joe Friday, you're ignoring the wife, who I call Julia Roberts. Julia Roberts doesn't care how much it costs. She just wants to feel good. I want to work with Marcia because she's like my long lost sister. She makes me feel good. And so with Kathy, she was ending on the call to action. I said, but what ultimately do you want your audience to do? And she said, I want them to buy my coaching program. I'm like, yes, I know you want them to buy your coaching program. But I had to ask her about 20 different why questions. We finally got to the heart of the matter. And she said, well, I want my audience to understand they can't do this on their own.
Mm.
I said, oh, you need to hire an expert story. She's like,
Ah, okay.
she's like, what's a hire an expert story? I'm like, I'll give you an example. So my I'll leave you with this. Many years ago, my wife and I, we had theater tickets. We were dressed to the nines, driving to the theater when we got a flat tire. My wife said, well, I'll call AAA and get the tow truck. I'm like, you don't need to call AAA. I'm a man. I can fix a flat tire. So I
In a
got out
beautiful
of the
suit?
car. Yeah, I got out of the car. I opened up the trunk. I got the spare tire, and then I got the pumper thingy, and then I got the big jack thing, and started trying to take off the nuts off of the wheel. 27 minutes later, I have grease all over me. My wife is standing beside the car with her arms crossed, shaking her head like I could have done so much better than this guy. Well, unbeknownst to me, 27 minutes earlier, she'd actually called AAA while I was opening. And this tow truck comes up, and this 17-year-old punk hops out of the truck, and he
Of
proceeds
course.
to fix my flat tire in 3 minutes. You know, I think there's times in life when all of us think we can do it on our own, but if you want to save time, you want to save money, you want to save a whole lot of headache and embarrassment, you hire an expert. And so what I've just done is I've taken a metaphorical story demonstrating to the audience that, you know what, maybe I should hire Kathy. I've tried lots of things in the past and they haven't worked, but Kathy, I really kind of relate to her. And so the exercise about writing all those stories, the first part is to write down all those stories. The second part of the exercise is then to think about, well, what's this story really about? Oh, this is a story about never giving up. Oh,
Mm,
this is a story about hiring an expert. Oh, this is a story about prioritizing. And on my
mm.
computer, I literally have hundreds of files with probably tens of thousands of stories like this. So when I'm creating a presentation, I'm very intentional. I'm like, okay, this is the action I want the audience to take. This is the emotion I want them to have. And when you do that, that's when you're taking a good presentation and turning it into a presentation that actually converts your audience into clients.
And it keeps people leaning forward and not looking down on their phone and spacing off or thinking about the 25 things that they have to do when this presentation is over, right?
That's right.
That's really valuable. And like Netflix or whatever, we want to be drawn into that story. So we sit there and binge watch 8 episodes.
Mhm. Right.
So
Uh,
wow, that's really impactful.
and
I
Netflix
love
is
the idea. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say Netflix is a perfect example. If you watch the very first episode of Breaking Bad, it starts off there he's driving his motorhome in the desert, and I call that's a great technique. I call it the lethal weapon. So if you ever used to watch the lethal weapon movies, a lot of movies they start off like, oh, we're going to introduce you to Danny Glover, and now we're going to introduce you to Mel Gibson. Lethal Weapon doesn't do that. It says, MGM or Warner Brothers presents, and all of a sudden you're in a car chase, and all of a sudden,
Boom.
what is going on? It's immediately you're right in the middle of the story. Too many people they screw up their beginning. Just get us right there, get us to it, because you said it very very well at the beginning. Is most of us have short attention spans. We got to get those people leaning in.
It's so funny. I've heard so many presentations where they've got a 20-minute presentation and 10 minutes they're still trying to build credibility. And you're like, I don't care about you. What are you going to do for me? Right. And I think that's really important. So if we can, I love it. If we can start off with a car chase, I mean, that's going to have everybody up on their seat going, what's next? Of
You're absolutely right, Marcy. And what I love that you just said is it's not about you, it's about your audience. And
course not.
so I work with so many people, they're like, oh, I don't want to sound salesy. I'm like, well, here's my strategy. Stop selling. Just serve them. I want you to
Yeah.
look at your audience as if they're dying and you have the antidote. And if they don't get your antidote, they will die. It's a very different frame of reference than, oh, I got to push my product. That's, we've all been around those infomercial. Like I'm addicted to, I watch at least 10 speakers a day. I was watching this guy in an infomercial. He was so sleazy. He had his hair slicked back. He had the nice fancy suit. He said, there are two types of people in this world: good, hardworking people and rich people. I'm like, ugh, I got to take a shower after I listen.
Gosh.
And we've all been to those presentations, but then you watch a great speaker, like one of my favorite speakers is Brene Brown. Brene has a wonderful technique, and everybody can learn from this. She talks about the importance of vulnerability, and everybody listening right now, here's my strategy for you. Stop sharing your successes, start sharing your failures, because not everybody in your audience has succeeded, but they've all failed. And the more you talk about your own failures, the more your audience is going to see themselves in you. And that's what you want to do to connect with an audience. When I'm working with politicians, I always give them a hard time. I always say, you ever notice that nobody running for president ever grew up middle class? They all grew up in a log cabin,
Nah.
That's what they always have to do is, and what they're trying to do is they're trying to get you to identify with the struggle because all of us have had the struggle.
Right. Wow, this is amazing because it frames the way you have presentation conversations, the way that you're, and this isn't only for people that are on stage, right? I mean, this is when you're doing any kind of recording or any kind of marketing or any kind of conversation with someone, you have to build that connection and trust before you can move to anything of, of any matter that you're going to sit at the table for. I mean, I can imagine even dating, right?
I use these same strategies with my three children, and actually,
And how do they play out?
They-
What's your success rate?
I don't know if they've actually caught on yet about all the little psychological strategies I'm using with them
They're
all the
probably going, "Okay, dad, story, another story," right? Oh my
time.
goodness.
They definitely say that.
Oh, right? But no, I think that this is really essential part of communicating
Mhm.
and getting that connection and relating. So many of the sleazy salespeople, they're like, "Oh, so you go to XYZ University? I was there. Do you remember?" So, which is not really anything of real true connection because it's a temporary connection rather than a story like what you're sharing could be a long-term connection because then they really feel the emotion, they figure that we are similar and we relate, right? And so I think that would take it even farther than one of those, oh, you like the Raiders? Yeah, they're losers, right? They've won how many games this, I mean, you can go through those kind of bonding things that a lot of guys go through, but I think the stories are better.
One of my favorite stories was Winston Churchill's mother, Jenny, was a contemporary of Queen Victoria. She knew every famous person of the day. And a reporter once asked her about the difference between Prime Minister Gladstone and Prime Minister Disraeli. And her response was terrific. She said, well, whenever I left a meeting with Prime Minister Gladstone, I left feeling like, wow, he is the most interesting person I have ever met. But whenever I left a meeting with Prime Minister Disraeli, I left feeling like, wow, I am the most interesting person he has ever met. So the technique is make your audience the hero. Donald Miller has a wonderful company called Story Brand, and I completely agree about with what he says. He says your job is you're the guide, your audience is the hero. You're Ben Kenobi, your audience is Luke Skywalker.
Yes.
And that's if you look at it that way, and this is a service mindset. My friend Joe Martin, a wonderful speaker, he calls it napkin leadership. He says when you go to a restaurant and the waiter hands you a napkin, do you stuff it down your shirt and wait for others to serve you, or do you put it over your arm and go out to serve others? And that's
Oh.
to me what a really good leader does.
Oh, I like that. That's a good, that's a really good mindset though to have is that your audience is the ones you want to connect with. They don't care about you and your story and your accolades and oh, we've been around since the dawn of the sun and we have, we've done this and we've had this. They don't care about that until they're ready to choose between you and them. Then they're going to look at I think at the quality or the consistency of it, but in the beginning, they wanna feel like you can solve their problem, right? And so how do you solve the problem talking about yourself? You're talking about them.
You're a dream student, Marcia. Couldn't say it better myself.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Oh, thank you. No, it really is, and I think that's where a lot of people get off, and go down the wrong tangent is even here in Las Vegas. Oh my goodness, there's a flippin' billboard on every corner with an attorney on it, and it's like, yes, they're terrible, and it's like they really don't say much out there, but they're up there. Oh, we win thousands and billions, and it's like, yeah, but you took billions to get to those billions, right? So it's nothing really that the audience. There was one billboard that got up there and said something about the line of, "We're gonna make you feel okay. We're gonna make you feel better." Didn't talk about winning millions and billions and look how cool my tie is and, that kind of stuff. Or the worst, the lady just has her face and her name, and I'm like, What kind of attorney are you?" Right? So she had a total miss on it. But yeah, I think that's where you want to really talk about the audience and get the audience to feel and come along with you.
Absolutely.
Um, you mentioned your 5 Cs. So you gave us C2, right? Are
Yeah.
you teasing us with the other C's?
We're playing bingo. So the first C is clarity. And
Clarity.
before you give a presentation, there are two questions you have to ask yourself. And it's amazing to me, 95% of the people I work with cannot answer one or both of these questions in a succinct manner. So those two questions are, who is your audience? And what is the problem that you solve? A lot of people say, oh, everybody's my audience. I'm like, well, if everybody's your audience, nobody's your audience. The riches are in the niches. You really want to narrow in and figure out who's that dream person that you're working with. And then what's the problem that you solve? Most people, they get very complicated. They get very clever. I'm like, you want to use the language of your audience. I mean, if they're starving to death, always talk about, are you hungry? Are you able to sleep at night? This is common. That's common language. Too many people try to impress their audience with their own ego and their vernacular. Like, that's not how human beings speak.
Yeah.
It's all right to say and you know what I'm saying and things like that. That's how people speak, and that's what we're trying to do is connect with people. And so once you answer those clarity questions, we know specifically who your audience is and what the problem is that you're solving. Then we connect with your audience. You're right. We've talked about that. You talk about, then you go into the content of your presentation, which is the largest part of your presentation. And ironically, it's the least important part of your presentation because, forgive me, I'm into research. The research shows us that people remember the beginning of your talk and the end of your talk. They don't remember anything in between. Translation, the bun's more important than the burger. But here's a key point I want your audience to understand. What people do remember is, are you helpful? So this is fascinating to me, the research on
Mm.
this. So one of my mentors was a guy, he's no longer with us. His name was Jim Trelease, and he wrote this great book called The Read Aloud Handbook. And what he did is he went around the country training parents how to read aloud to their kids. Wonderful presenter, one of the best presenters I've ever seen. And all of a sudden, in the middle of his presentation, he'd say, oh, I'm going to teach you something. This will save your life someday. If you ever lock yourself out of your car and you don't have your keys, all you have to do, as long as you have your cell phone, call your spouse, have your spouse put the key next to the cell phone. You put your cell phone next to the car door, it'll unlock the car.
Get out of here.
Marcia, I've tried this from 3,000 miles away. It actually works.
No way.
It doesn't work on
No
like
way.
it wouldn't work on a Tesla because Tesla doesn't work like that. But
Yeah, because I use my phone.
the old things that you have like a fob with it, like
Uh-huh.
I had a Toyota Corolla, and this happened to me. And
Really?
here's what's great about this. This has nothing to do with his presentation whatsoever. I've seen men and women come up to him after a presentation. Oh my gosh, I saw you 6 years ago. I remember that trick you taught us. And oh my gosh, it saved my life. Ever since then, I've been telling everybody they have to hire you as a speaker. Has nothing to do with his presentation, but what he demonstrated to the audience is he's helpful. And that's what
I
we're looking
love
for.
it.
They're looking for solutions to their problems. So, for example, I'm working with a woman right now, and she works with people with clinical depression. Of course, I don't have a pen on me. So, where's a pen? All right, I got it. All right, I got a
Need
pen.
props. Need props.
I have a pen. I didn't bring my prop. So I said, well, why don't you tell your audience, hey, everybody, take a pen and bite down on it. So this is interesting. So when you bite down on a pen, it triggers a hormone in your mind which signals to your brain that you're happy, that you're smiling. And so it actually produces endorphins in your brain to make you happy. So there's actually a way to trick your brain into happiness just by biting on a pen. It makes your brain think you're smiling, which then you actually do produce the same number of endorphins. This isn't anything, this is just a simple little thing that she can do in her talk. And all of a sudden, people are like, that was a really cool strategy. For example,
Exactly. They don't care what she talked about. It was the little tip she threw in somewhere in the middle.
I talk to people all the time. Like, most people waste their time on social media when they're on phones. I'm like, I'm actually very intentional on my cell phone. I have my calendar give me reminders all the time. So every day, so I'm a bad Christian, so I'm trying to learn different pieces of scripture. So every day at 4:29, I go over Ephesians 4:29, which is whatever you. I'm screwing. I'm going to screw it up. I haven't. You have to. I haven't learned it yet. So it's. Oh, do not let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouth, but only but only what is helpful for building others up according to their needs, that it may benefit those who listen. So I'm practicing it. But so every day I'm practicing that. Um,
That's a great mantra
yeah.
though
I mean, I read
to
the
say
book.
every day at 429.
Yeah, yeah. I read the book Dune. So and there's this thing called the Litany Against Fear. And so every day at 9/11, I practice it. I must not fear. Fear is the mind killer. Fear is a little death.
Yes, yes.
So I practice that. I married my wife on December 20th. So every day at 12:20, I have an alert to tell my wife that I love her. So
Oh, you're so sweet. Guys,
really,
are you hearing this? This is fantastic.
I'm building empathy with my audience. But you see, you just demonstrated it. What I'm showing people is here's a tool all of you have, but probably none of you ever thought of, oh, here's something you can use this tool for. And so in the content portion of your presentation, you really want to demonstrate that you're helpful. There are other things that we love to teach people about, but I want to get to the other two C's. The other two C's are the call to action and the close. The most important thing I always tell people on the call to action is you need one clear call to action. So
Yes.
I was on a podcast yesterday, and the hostess at the end of the podcast, she said, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Make sure you like, subscribe, and give us a 5-star review. And when we got off the air, I said, you just asked your audience to do 3 different things. They're not going to do any of them. Remember this. Choices confuse and cause you to lose. And I'll demonstrate this. If you look at grocery store statistics in the United States, you look at all the big major grocery store chains, Smith's and Kroger, Ralph's, Publix, all of them. None of them are number one. The number one grocery store in the United States, based on volume, is Trader Joe's. And I'll tell you exactly why. When you go to to one of these big grocery store chains and you go to buy mustard, there's 38 different types of mustard. When you go to Trader Joe's, there's one. It's called mustard. They've made the decision for you.
Oh, okay.
And this is why it's so important to ask yourself those clarity questions. Who is my audience and what's the problem I'm solving? So I'm going to create one call to action for that audience that solves that one problem. And then, of course, you need an emotional close. You need to end getting people. I mean, I think I'm a little bit different than a lot of these speaking coaches I see, because and Jimmy and I, this is kind of why we created the company, was we were trained to teach people to share that most tragic moment in their life. And there's 3 reasons why I refuse to do that. First of all, the world just survived a global pandemic. Everybody's had a lot of bad stuff happen to them.
Yeah.
Another sad story. I think we need stories of hope. All right. Second of all, what Coach Jimmy and I are teaching people to do is to create what we call your well-crafted story. Politicians would call it a stump speech. You can call it peanut butter and jelly. It doesn't matter what you call it. What this is a presentation that you're going to deliver again and again. You're going to get so good at this, it's going to be like the Pledge of Allegiance, like the Lord's Prayer. You're not even going to have to think about it, but this is the way you're going to introduce yourself. Do you really want to tell that same tragic story again and again? I mean, I have a friend, his daughter was
Just
killed in
keep
a
reliving it.
yeah, I have a guy. His daughter was killed in a school shooting. He's told that story over 1,000 times. I have
Oh
no
my gosh.
idea how you get on stage and tell an audience about the worst day in your life again and again. And here's a third reason. This is where people get angry with me. I have one objective when I'm on stage. I want you to leave here feeling better than when you came in. I want you laughing, smiling, happy. I think there's something admirable about that as an objective. I believe the people that tell the same sad story again and again, by the 20th time they're telling it, now those are crocodile tears, and now they're being manipulative. And I'm not saying it's not an effective sales strategy. It's actually a very effective sales strategy. But I personally don't want to have to take a shower after I get off stage just because I manipulated my audience. There are ethical ways to get people to want to do business with you. And so I like things that are going to get people pumped up at the end. But I like to keep it humorous all the time. I've always had a policy. I take my job seriously. I don't take myself seriously because I ain't all that, and neither are you. And if you think you're all that, teach kindergarten for a week. Those little ones. I had a little
I love
girl
it.
once. She raised her hand. I'm like, LaShawn, the question. It's like, Miss Brassell, when are you going to trim your nose hair? I'm like, this afternoon. Thanks for bringing. I ain't all that.
That's great. Oh my goodness. I love these stories, Danny. This is fantastic. It really made like the half hour I looked at, I went, "Oh my God, it's over." And we could hear great stories like this all the time. And I think I like the idea that you wanna end on a happy note that gives someone hope and walking away with a smile on their face rather than a crocodile tear going down. And, coming from the ladies' space and the ladies talking on stage, when she starts crying, I'm, like, tapping out. I'm like, "Alright, I'm done. You're gone." You just lost all credibility with me when you start crying from stage because you're so emotional. So, I agree with you, happy is much better. There's enough crap in the world right now that we don't need to focus on that. And so I love that. But you got me thinking now on my outro, I've got 2 offers. So I'm worried on that. But I love this. So tie a bow on this for us, Danny, and tell listeners where they can find you, your program, and how they can learn to tell stories that really connect with people.
Well, as a thank you, Marcia, for having me on and enduring all of my stories. And again, there's no greater research than the movie Monsters, Inc., which shows that the power of laughter is much more powerful than the power of sadness. But I wanted to give everybody in your audience a freebie. So if you go to freestoryguide.com, guide like a tour guide, freestoryguide.com, I'm going to give everybody your own well-crafted story blueprint. What this is the actual process that Coach Jimmy and I take our clients through so that you can create your own well-crafted story. What this does for you is it takes the guesswork out of what should I put here and why am I putting this here? And what this means for you is the peace of mind that you have an actual system that's going to convert your audiences into clients and really build a bigger impact for your community. You can get that at freestoryguide.com. And again, thank you so much for having me, Marcia, and thanks for all that you do. I really appreciate you.
Oh, back at you. I think this was so much fun. It was so enjoyable to hear. And my face hurts because I'm smiling so much because it's been so fun. And I love that's the energy you want to give away. And I readily accept it. And I know my audience has as well. So all right, speaking of, thanks for tuning in today. I hope you picked up some valuable insights and actionable ideas that will help you make your business more profitable. And what better way to do it than sharing a story and making that connection with your audience, whether you're sitting across the table from an employee or a client, or you're sitting, standing in front of a huge auditorium, or, just at a networking event. Having a story is really where you're going to make that connection and get people to lean into you, and Danny's the expert at it. So definitely go get his story guide and figure out how to craft your own stories. All right, but before we go, if you're ready to bring in more clients and keep more of what you earn, then grab the free Profit Booster Growth Map. It pinpoints 3 moves to grow your revenue and stop leaks fast. So go get it anytime at profitbooster.biz. And while you're at it, here's my second ask is go subscribe because you don't want to miss future shows. You can always catch Profit with a Plan on any of your favorite podcast platforms. We're looking forward to more great profitable strategies on next week's show. So until then, make your plans and profit with them. Thank you so much, Danny. This was a lot of fun.
Thank you, Marcia.